What's up, guys? It's Steve from Get Smart back with another TFT video. Something a little bit different from our usual VOD reviews. Today we're going to be discussing something that I think is relevant to a lot of players, given that the season's on its end, or it's coming to an end in the next few days, next few weeks, and people are really trying to make a push for the next ring as to where they want to end and get their elo up, get up another division. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about how to stop griefing yourself and get your LP back. So this is actually a short little clip or a screenshot of my past week and how I've gone from being on the brink of Masters to falling actually all the way to Platinum 1. And this has kind of forced me to take a look and do a bit of an audit of my games, which I've of course been doing through the VOD reviews, and I just want to share my experiences as well as my tips with you guys to get you guys on the right course, and hopefully these actionable tips are going to help you guys get to the next rank before the end of the season. As far as what the problem was, it's definitely going to vary person to person, as well as game to game, but my general problems that I could basically categorize them as the 5 following categories. So the first category was being greedy with items. This can kind of come up in 2 ways. The first is not slamming items. Anytime you have 4 components or more, you should definitely be slamming an item. If you are pre-leveling or leveling to 4 at the start of the game at 2-1, you should also be slamming an item. So yeah, you want to slam items really early, and those are like the two rule of thumbs that you need to keep in mind. But the other way that you can be greedy with items is actually by selling your item holder early. So a couple examples of this would be you've got a level like a Zed chosen, Slayer chosen obviously, and you have it itemized with like Runaan's and GA and all of your other Olaf items. And then you grab a level 1 Olaf, and you basically are faced with this decision: oh, do I sell the Zed right away, or do I wait till level 2 Olaf? You have to really evaluate your board then, and think, is this level 2 Zed actually doing enough work to merit holding onto the items for a bit longer? Another common example would be you have a Callista holding your Kale items, for example. If you have a level 2 Callista holding your Kale items, a level 1 Kale might not make better use of those items. So it's really common that I'll see people, and myself included, I'll get the 4-cost carry that I was aiming for, immediately sell my item holder, and then I'll kind of regret it because I'll start losing rounds when I could have continued to ride that lower tier cost carry for a little bit while longer. So a second problem that people are making is greeting with gold, and for me this is either I'm not rolling when I should be, so I'll be coming up to round 4-1 for example, and I'll think I'll have a strong enough board, but I don't really have a strong enough board in place, and I won't roll down there, and I'll greed because I'm close to holding on to 50 econ or whatever, and the reality is, if you're playing greedy like this, you're just going to lose a lot more health than you have to, and it's often going to be the difference between bot 4 and top 4, or an 8th and a 6th, depending on where you're at. So yeah, the other option is not leveling. Some people will choose, myself included, to not follow a standard leveling practice in order to eke out a few more gold, and yeah, this is like sometimes worth it, but the thing about making these plays is it's not about making the right decision with the benefit of hindsight, it's about making the highest probability play. So in this case, like not leveling at 3-2 for example, because you want to maintain a bit more econ, yeah, probably not a worthwhile long-term play. So the third way that people are getting in their own way and causing problems is by not playing their strongest board. And this is just going to come from practice and practice and practice. Like the more repetitions you put in, the easier you're going to have finding boards that perform optimally. But the reality is you should definitely be doing some VOD reviews and stuff and making sure that you're not focused too hard and you're playing flexibly in order to actually play what's handed to you rather than going in and forcing games. And this might not apply to you necessarily, but the chances are, if you go and you look at some of your VODs, you go and replay a couple games, you're going to see that there's opportunities where you're leaving synergies off the board, or you're not getting your transitions in soon enough. I don't know how it's manifesting for you personally, but there's definitely times where you're not playing your strongest board. So the fourth way in which people are causing problems for themselves, or at least I'm seeing it myself personally, is not pushing your streaks hard enough. So the general rule of thumb is on 2-2, so the second combat round, if you win or if you lose that, you should probably try and push that streak for the end of round 2. So the first round of combat, who cares what happens really? If you win, it's great. If you lose, whatever. But 2-2, try and base your streaks off of that. So this means that if you win on 2-2, you're probably going to want to be slamming items, getting your components on, and pre-leveling before the carousel so that you'll be level 5 and have a chance of high rolling some better units to help you push out the win streak for stage 2. And if you lose, this means that you probably want to do some scouting around to see the other weak boards to make sure that they're going to continue to beat you, but you still want to leave enough units out there, not completely open for it if you don't have to, in order to loss streak a little bit. And if you're loss streaking, it's important to get right to the 5 losses basically, in order to get value out of it. So a perfect loss streak through Krugs is pretty effective if you don't think you can put together a strong enough board to win streak. And the fifth way in which I generally have been holding myself back has been messing up positioning. So I usually try and call it out in my VOD reviews when I've messed up positioning, but this can be anything from not having my carries in the correct spots, like you want to be cornering ASOLs, or you want to be scouting and dodging Aatroxes with your non-QSS carries. There's a lot of ways in which this can manifest, and it's definitely something that deserves a whole video on its own in the future, and I'm definitely going to pursue that in the future. So on top of those 5 main issues, newer players are also going to struggle with issues like not playing the meta comps and not building strong items, and this just comes down to game knowledge. The more time you've put into trying to get better at this game, you're gonna be just able to do these things more naturally. In videos, I definitely hope to go into all of the above problem areas that I've addressed. But the way in which we're going to be able to see immediate results is by simplifying the process and tapping into some simple decision-making heuristics. Like, this game's super complicated, so we're just going to simplify it and basically just do the same stuff over and over again in order to get the results that we want at the end of the season here. So the current meta is, towards the end of the season, I found everybody's playing a lot more aggressively. Like, the strength of boards has gone up tremendously in personal experience, and that's something I haven't done a great job prioritizing. As I was climbing higher towards Masters, I was thinking more about squeezing out all the econ I could to get to the late game, but then I found myself suddenly not making it to the late game, and that's how you lose a lot of elo really quick. So yeah, we're bringing it back to basics in order to get ourselves there. So the actionable tips that I'm going to be presenting you guys with today, I'm going to break down into 3 categories. So the first categories is personal, mental. It's check in with yourself. You got to check your ego before you're hopping into these games. If you're trying to make a final push to a higher division for the end of the season, it means that there's a lot of people that are trying to do the same. Everybody's playing really competitively right now, so if you're not playing at 100% capacity, just don't queue up. And it's also this also is an opportunity to kind of check in with reality here. If you achieved a certain rank while like forcing the Spirit Sharpshooter composition, for example, or forcing one-tricking some composition, you kind of have to realize that you should probably stick to that, rather than playing extremely flexibly, and the converse is also true. If you're a flex player, like I consider myself to be, then you shouldn't be forcing something too hard. So one problem that I found in particular for myself is, while I consider myself to be a flex player, I really liked the sharpshooter and Tristana Spirit build. So I found myself forcing that when I don't really have to, and when it's not really available, when it's been somewhat contested. And the reality is that's cost me a ton of elo. So I just have to check in with myself and say, hey, like, I know that that build's good, but if I want to play it, I have to do my scouting or whatever. And I have to be more prepared to transition off of it rather than just autopiloting playing it. So yeah, that's just being ready to play and being mindful. So the next category of fixes or implementation that we're going to use is our strategy. Like, what are we actually looking to do in the game? So first of all, my number one tip is to avoid rerolls right now unless it's absolutely handed to you. And by that, if you want to quantify it, I would say like 5 to 6 of the unit that you're rerolling by 2/7. That's the Krugs. And if you don't have it, then I would just give up on the reroll and try and pivot to something else. The next strategic point that we're looking to implement is stick to standard leveling patterns. So standard leveling patterns, if you're not familiar with them, is going to level 4 at 2-1, going to level 5 at 2-5, going to level 6 at 3-2, going to level 7 at 4-1, and level 8 at 5-1, or 4-5 if you're doing a fast 8. It doesn't really matter when you go to level 9 because you might not go to level 9 every game, but you should at the very least be going to level 7 every single game. Like, there's no excuse not to go to level 7 every single game, pretty much at 4-1. And yeah, you should stick to these, and if you're not sticking to this, then you're probably being greedy when you shouldn't be. Yeah, goes back to the problems we identified earlier in the video. So the next strategic element that we're looking to implement is picking an early chosen. So one of your first 2 chosens should be picked up just to play through the first 2 rounds. You don't have to hold on to this forever. It does not have to be perfect. Just play something and play around it. Having a 2-star champion is too valuable in stage 2. It just is. You can't really leave that on the board unless you're going for a loss streak intentionally. So generally we look to reroll our chosens at level 8, but we can also reroll it at like any minion round, any round that you're not playing against another player. You could be looking to sell off your chosen if it doesn't fit. So at 2-7, if you wanted to sell off a 1-cost chosen, you could, or at 3-7. At 3-7, if you have a 1-cost chosen that doesn't really fit your build, I would actually recommend going for it. And because at 4-1, you're going to want to be rolling down to 20 gold if you don't really feel confident with your board, just to save health. But yeah, basically, moral of the story, pick an early chosen, build around it for the first 2 rounds, and we're looking to really spend our gold at level 8 when we're looking for a chosen. And the final easy implementational tips I'm going to have are just towards items. So I did mention it earlier, but if you have more than 4 components, you have to be slamming an item. But more than that, the tip's really going to be coming down to carousel. A lot of people have a really strict and rigid carousel order in their mind. If you are one of those players that's forcing something, definitely continue to get the best items for it. But if you're a flex player, I find it better to go for what's uncontested on the carousel. So personally, I like glove starts because I find it to be the most flexible item. But if I see that there's only 1 glove and there's 2 or 3 people already looking like they're vying for it, then I'm instead going to go for the uncontested rod or the uncontested bow, because it matters to me to get a good item early rather than getting the best item early. And I just like really value that over having a, let's say it's a like 25% chance of getting the crit glove, but otherwise I'm gonna get a giant's belt or a tier. I would way rather take the 60 or 50% chance of getting like a rod or something, which is not quite as good of an item as far as I'm concerned, but still it's an A tier item and one that's going to be consistently providing value. The final tip for your items, guys, is slam flexible items early in stage 2. You're really going to be prioritizing slamming items such as HOJ, Sunfire Cape, your GAs, and let's say Lockets probably are the top 4 most slammable items during stage 2. Other items can be slammed during stage 2, like Runans and Last Whispers, like Jeweled Gauntlets. These items can also be slammed in round 2, but they are a little bit more restricting in that they'll limit you to like 2 or 3 comps rather than like 4 or 5 comps kind of thing, and that's fine. That's completely fine. But the only thing I would say then is to avoid slamming both AD and magic boosting items. So I would avoid slamming, for example, a Static Shiv and a Deathblade, because there's obviously very little synergy between those, and you're probably either going to be going for like a Slayer's attack damage based comp, or like a magic based Nico Vanguard, or Kennen Keeper comp, or like a Mage comp, and none of the comps really run a mix of both attack damage and magic damage items in them. Alright, that's it for today, guys. Hope you enjoyed the tips. I hope you can put them into play, and I hope that they can help you eke out a little bit extra elo to help end the season off on a good note. Till next time, it's Steve from Get Game Smart. Keep gaming, gamers. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and comment down below what you'd like to see in future videos.